Welcome, guys. Today, inshallah, we're going to start the first part of the global supply chain. We'll cover what's called SCOR model. By saying a SCOR model, we mean it's a supply chain operation reference. So when you take the capital letter of each of these, then we have SCOR. And when we say it's a reference, it means it's a book that we can refer to or return to when we have a problem or something like that, if we need a clarification. It's not a book that we need to read. The SCOR model covers two main topics. The first one is we face a problem when we deal in the supply chain. The problem is we may do the same task. For example, somebody will be doing a procurement in an organization. Another person is doing purchasing. A third person is doing sourcing. So instead of having different names for the same process, we will have one name for the process. So the first part of the SCOR covers how to do or to name the processes in a uniform way, how to do these processes, what is the expected input and output for this process, and what is the best tools that can be used for this process. The second part covers something called metrics. When we're doing a process, we need to know, are we doing the process in the best possible way? Are we achieving our goal for this process? So that's why we need to evaluate ourselves. We need to evaluate each step that we're doing. And that's why we used the SCOR in the second part, the metrics part. So we have two parts. One part covers the processes, and the second part covers the metrics. So here are some information about the origin of the SCOR model. It was developed by a council called Supply Chain Council. This council was later purchased and acquired by ABEX. ABEX is one of the most well-known training company in the field of supply chain management. It's a big name in the training for the supply chain management. Supply Chain Council originated as an independent. It doesn't originate from another company. It doesn't come from another company. It's an independent company. It doesn't depend on other companies. It's not for-profit corporation. In other words, they gain money, but this money is not used. It doesn't go to the owner. This money goes in improving the work, in opening more branches, in expanding the company itself. And this was organized in 1996 by two companies. One of them is called Global Management Consulting Firm, and the one of them is a market research firm. It's called Advanced Manufacturing Research, and the other one is called Bitiglio, Rapin, Todd, and McGrath Company. When they started, they were thinking about there are some obstacles in the supply chain. We're talking different languages for the same task. We're using different terminologies. We don't know how to evaluate our work in a good way. And there is no person that can do it in a good way. So we need to collaborate together. So they're starting by collecting or organizing meeting between 69 voluntary companies. By saying voluntary, it means they don't take money for their work, for their contribution in the SCOR model. So while doing the SCOR model or forming the SCOR model, these companies were not gaining money. So what was the benefit for the companies? The benefits for the companies, beside being social responsibility, is to improve their work. Instead of having different departments and different job titles for the same work and different meanings for the same work, we have just one word. It was developed by SCOR. Nowadays, at the time of preparing this presentation, the SCOR had about 1,000 members. So what was the objective, once again, of the Supply Chain Council? The main objective behind starting the SCOR model is to develop a standard supply chain process reference model, enabling effective communication among the supply chain partners, because we are partners and supply chains contain different companies in different nations, in different languages. We need to communicate using a standard terminology. Instead of calling the procurement, purchasing, sourcing, different names, we need just one name. So when we finish this one, when we say S1, for example, we know the meaning of S1 instead of saying it's sourcing, it's purchasing, it's procurement, instead of having different names. To better communicate and learn supply chain issues. The second objective, once again, is we need to use metrics to compare and measure the performance. We need to know what is the performance, what is the performance level of our company. Are we doing our best? Do we need to improve? Are we overachieving? Are we underachieving? These are different levels that we need to know. In order to know this, we need to measure our performance and compare our performance to others. Now, the methodology behind the supply chain operation reference, we use three main methods and combine them in the SCOR. The first one is something called business process reengineering. This is business process engineering. The meaning of a business process reengineering: we go and see a current situation. We call this situation as is situation. As is. This is the current situation. Then we analyze this as is situation and we correct all the mistakes or most of the mistakes in the as is situation. The current situation has a lot of problems. We fix these problems. As a result, we have a better or desire to be future state. So business process engineering means capturing the as is state of a process and drive the desire to be future state. That's re-engineering. That's basically rethinking the process once again so that we can eliminate all the bad things within this process. We improve this process by removing all the unnecessary steps. So this is the first part here. The second part, something called benchmarking. By saying benchmarking, every supply chain is aiming at a certain objective. For example, a supply chain may aim at reducing the cost, or may aim at being fast, speed. And whenever we establish a supply chain, we need to clearly identify what is the objective behind this supply chain. And we cannot aim at different things at the same time. We cannot deliver it fast as possible using the lowest possible cost or using low cost. It's either fast or cheap. We may think about delivering it fast at the lowest possible cost, but this is possible cost. It's not the lowest actual cost. We cannot reduce the cost we cannot have the lowest possible cost, or lowest cost at all, and the fastest delivery method. So it's a trade-off. You either do this or that. Okay, let's say I'm focusing on being fast and I'm delivering the product in 1 day. What do I need to measure in the supply chain? Do I need to measure the delivery time, or do I need to measure the time between ordering and receiving the order, or do I need to find the time from the actual production? What is the thing that I need to measure? And this is called the metrics. So I need to measure something. That's called metrics. So benchmarking starts by identifying what to measure. Then how to measure. I will measure this and will find I'm delivering it in 1 day. Then the next question, is it a good measurement or a bad one? Is 1 day good or bad? We cannot answer this question except if we compare us to other companies. So by saying benchmarking, it means find a way to assess yourself, to measure yourself, metrics. Measure these metrics and then compare your performance to others so that you know whether you're good or bad. That's basically the benchmarking part. So it's quantifying the operational performance. Here's quantifying the operational performance of similar companies and establish internal targets based on best in class. So if I want to compete to be the best in the fast delivery, I need to compare myself to the best, the company that is doing the same business, my same business, and find and be better than them. That's the meaning of being best in class. So benchmarking, once again, is identifying what to measure, quantifying it, measure it, and compare it to others that are better than me or they are doing well. The third case is called, or the third methodology is called best in practice. Best in practice is we go to or we study what the best companies do. For example, if I'm doing the planning and I find that the best companies are using SAP software. So one of the possible solutions is to adopt SAP in my company, to use SAP. That's the meaning of best practices. Have a look what the best in class are doing or practicing, and take these practices and apply them in your company. So characterize the management practice and software solutions that result in best in class performance. These who are actually best in class. Similar companies that are doing very well. They are using some tools. Now, what these tools are. The advantage of the SCOR model is it combines the three of these methods. It has business process reengineering. We have a look at the current process. We see whether it's correct or not. We see whether there are wastes in it. We see whether everything is in order. You have the correct input. You're doing the correct process. You're getting the correct output. So we have everything is correct. If you don't have it, we fix it. So this is business process reengineering. And then we quantify our objective. Do you want to be fast? What metrics do you need to measure? What are the performances that you need to evaluate? Finally, we have a look at the best companies. What are the best practices that are used in the best companies in the same sector you're studying, and try to adopt them. So that's the methodology that this book or this reference is adopting. So once again, Supply Chain Operation Reference Model, SCOR. The primary use of the SCOR is to describe, in other words, to give a complete details, or not a complete details, it's some details about each process, gives you a way to measure this performance, and then evaluate whether this performance is good for your use or not. Is it good for your current company or not? In order to do that, we will find that SCOR contains several things. The first thing is it has a standard description of the management processes. In other words, when you're doing sourcing or supplying, or if you're buying something, what is the description of the sourcing or buying? Okay. What is the description of delivering? So we have description of all of the processes within a supply chain. It gives you a framework of relationships among the standard processes. In other words, after doing the sourcing, what should you do? Before doing the delivery, what should you do? And after doing the delivery, what should you do? So it gives you a complete framework or relationship between them. What is the input for each process? What is the output for each process? So it describes every process. That's number one. Number two, it gives a relationship or framework for these relations. In other words, what's the input of each one and what's the output for each one? Number three, it gives you a standard metrics to measure the process performance. Are you doing it in a correct way? It's not enough to say yes or no. We need to evaluate this using some sort of numbers, facts. Are you achieving a correct level or not? So we need to identify what to measure. By saying what to measure, we mean metrics. Number four, management practices that produce best-in-class performance. If you're doing this, or you need to do this, SCOR will give you what the best companies are doing as a practice to improve this process. For example, are they using a software, SAP for example? Are they doing some sort of collaboration? Are you doing agreements? So these called best in practice, best in class practices. What the best in class are doing as a sort of practices. So when we do that, let's get back here. When we do that, okay, this will enable the company to evaluate and compare their performance with other companies effectively. When I do that, I will be able, for example, to know if I want to compete on the speed, what should I measure? And when I measure this, if I score 90%, is it good or bad? Should I improve this one, or I'm doing it well? Identify and pursue specific competitive advantage. If we do it in the reverse, I'm doing this and getting 90% as a score. Can I use the speed as a sort of advantage? Can I claim that I am fast? I'm delivering the product fast. I'm producing the product fast. Can we do that or not? And that's the meaning of competitive advantage. As you know from the course of supply chain management, basically so far we're competing on two things: efficiency, which comes from the cost side, and the speed, which is comes from the responsiveness. Identify software tools best suited to their specific requirement. From the best in practice, we know that the best in class is using the best in class company is using SAP, Oracle, is using some sort of software. So we identify what software or which software we can use to improve our performance. The newer version of the SCOR adds to these four things. Number 5, HR requirement. In other words, if you want to hire a new person that performs the task, what HR capabilities you need to find or you need to assess in the candidates. Now have a look at the supply chain SCOR reference boundaries. What does it cover and what is not covered in that model? The SCOR spans means covers from up to all the customer interactions from order entry through paid invoice. So from ordering the product up to delivering the product and delivering the invoice. These are covered within the supply chain operation reference, the SCOR. It also covers all product, physical product or services, all product transactions, any process that covers or belongs to the production, from suppliers, so from the start of the supply chain up to the customer, in other words, up to the end or throughout the end of the supply chain. And this includes the equipment, supplies, spare parts, bulk products, software, anything in between. All market interactions, from the understanding of aggregate demand to the fulfillment of each order. So it covers basically the planning side, from making an aggregate plan that we already took in the operations management course, up to the actual delivery of the product. It looks from this definition that SCOR covers everything. However, this is not true. If we have a look here, we find that SCOR does not attempt to describe every business process or activity. Here are some activities that are not covered by the SCOR model. Number 1, it doesn't cover sales and marketing. In other words, demand generation. It doesn't cover demand generation in any way. It doesn't want to lose focus on the supply chain. This is marketing activity and it's something huge and there is a lot of know-how in it. So it's not included in the SCOR model. Number 2, research and technology development. This is related to number 3 as well, product development. In other words, anything related to research and development, anything related to know-how, anything related to secrets in the production are not covered in the supply chain operation reference, in the SCOR model. SCOR model doesn't cover the know-how of any company. It doesn't reveal how the actual production takes place. It doesn't reveal how you can do this thing. It just gives you a guideline. If you want to do this, use, for example, MRP. It doesn't describe what's MRP. If you want to do a good planning, use SAP. It doesn't cover how to use SAP. If in the production you need to produce a certain product, it doesn't explain how to produce it. It's your task. Number 4, some elements of post-delivery customer support, some elements of after-sales services are not covered within the scope, the SCOR model. So basically, SCOR covers the main process without revealing any secrets or know-hows of the companies. That's why the companies actually volunteer and participate in this, in the development of the SCOR. If we ask things about know-how and things like that, they will not participate. Now I want you to pause the video for a minute or so, and once again try to write anything that is related to your supply chain. We'll find after you return from the pause that anything you're doing in your company is either you're getting a product from some other member, so we call this sourcing. So sourcing is like procurement, purchasing. It's getting the input. And then we produce our part, or we're making our step in the process, in the supply chain. So this is the process that's called the make. And after we make the product, we tend to deliver the product, or we sell the product. This is called delivering. It doesn't have to be actual delivering. We may deliver in our warehouse. You get the product and the delivery occurs in the warehouse, in my warehouse. But it's called the delivery process, by the way. And then you need to do some planning for each of these steps. You're planning the source, you're planning the make, you're planning the deliver. That's the meaning of planning here. You prepare for them. And then you may do a return. But there are two sides of the return. You may receive some input and find that this input is not good and you return it back. So this is the return sourced item. Return what you bought. Or you deliver the product, it turns out to be bad, and it is returned back. So this is the return delivery. What you delivered is actually returned back to you. And if you have a look, this is your company. As a member in the supply chain, your supplier is doing the same, your customer is doing the same, and so on. So these processes are actually done in every step in the supply chain. Now have a look at the processes here. The SCOR model is divided into two major parts. If you have a look at the book itself, the book is divided into two parts. One of them is related to or covers the processes, and the other one covers the metrics. In other words, the first one covers how to do the processes, how to do any step within the supply chain. The other part, how to evaluate the performance of each step. Okay. We will cover today on this lecture and the following two lectures, the first part, the processes. Then we will have a different lecture for the metrics part. Now, if you have a look at the processes, we'll find that the processes itself, whatever you do is classified into plan, make source make deliver return. These are the 5 main categories of anything that we're doing in a supply chain. So whatever you do is actually classified into one of these categories. That's why this is called in a supply chain level 1. Because before you do any further analysis, you need to classify the task that you're doing. If I'm buying something, then is it a plan, source, make, deliver, or return? So it's a sourcing. We're getting some product from other people. So any category or any task is classified into one of these 5 tasks, and so this is called level 1. So level 1 is, for that example, it's sourcing. Then there are different types of each of these ones. So for example, sourcing is divided into 2 things. Make is divided into 3 things, or 3 things here. Plan is divided into 5 things. This is called level 2. For example, source is divided into, are you sourcing products that are stocked at the supplier? So this is called stocked items. Or are you sourcing products that are made to order? يبقى to order items. We may have other classification, but we will not cover them now. So when I buy, for example, flour, is it a stocked item or is it made to order? Flour is a stocked item. So this is called number 1. This is called number 2. So when I buy flour, it means I am doing sourcing. This is level 1. And within the sourcing, it's type number 1. So that's why we call this level 2. In other words, what type of sourcing? We classified level 1 as sourcing. Then inside sourcing, which type of sourcing? Is it level 1, level 2, level 3? Which not level 1, level 2, level 3. Is it sourcing a stocked item or sourcing to order items? Or which type of sourcing? And then when we're buying flour, which is level 2, so it's written S2. So the meaning of S2 here, S means sourcing, 2 it's the type of, S1. S is sourcing, 1 is sourcing stocked item. That's number 1 here. The process of sourcing stocked items in itself is not a one process. It's a collection of processes. In other words, when we do this, we need to search for supplier, we do some transaction, so we have here some steps. So S1 is further divided into step number 1, 2, 3. So this is called level 3, which is basically the main steps in doing this process. So the main steps of sourcing or buying flour will be number 1, 2, 3. Where can you get this? You can get this from the SCOR model itself. It's not something to memorize. So basically, if you are buying stocked items, so buying in itself is called sourcing. Flour is something that is stocked at the supplier. So we're sourcing stocked item. When we do the sourcing stocked items, we need to negotiate, we need to do some customer supplier relationship management. So the steps here are called level 3. So why we do that? Why do we do that? Why are we classifying the sourcing into stocked items and order items? Because basically there is a huge difference between them. In other words, if you're doing stocked items, if you are buying stocked items, usually you're buying in large quantities. Usually you buy one or two times, low frequency. One or two times because you're buying large quantities. But when you buy to order items, usually you buy smaller quantities or more frequent. So basically here we have totally different practices. Here we need to hire a large vehicle. Here we need to hire a small vehicle and so on. So we have different classification. So let me revise this once again. When you need to analyze any step you're doing in a supply chain, for example, we're making a product here. Here's making a product. This is the step of production. According to SCOR, any process is either plan, source, make, deliver, return. So in our case, production is the making process. So it's an M. Which type in the M process? Manufacturing, we need to have a look at what product are we producing. If we're producing aeroplanes, so we're making this to order. We produce the aeroplane whenever you order an aeroplane. So if you have a look at the making here, making is divided into make stocked items, make to order items. This is number 1, and this is number 2. So in our case, when we produce aeroplane, it's a manufacturing, it's to order item because it's based on 2. So M2 here means we have 2 levels. Level 1 is manufacturing or make. It's not manufacturing, it's make. And then 2 here refers to the type of making. It's to order items. Now, when we go to SCOR and open the page for M2, you'll find that here are the general steps of M2. We have one step here, for example, bring the product, set up the machines. We have some steps here. This is called number 1, 2, 3. So when I write, for example, M2.2, these are 3 steps. The first step, M, or 3 levels. The first one, M, means making. 2 means it's a to order item. Point means it's a step. Which step? It's step number 2. So when I write, for example, D 1.3, D means it's a delivery. 1 means it's the first type of the delivery. We don't have to memorize it now, but once again, it's a stocked item. So D1 means you're delivering a stocked items. Now, if you go to the page of the stocked items, you will find many steps. This is step number 3. We're talking about step number 3. So basically, if I am doing any step, for example, we're doing a MRP. This is a planning activity. And this is the planning for the production. Now, when I have a look here, this MRP, which classification can we use? We have a look at P, S, M, D, return. MRP is a planning activity, so it belongs to P. P is divided, unlike the others, into 5 parts, or 5 subcategories, or 5 level 2. Either it's a planning for the entire supply chain, or it's planning for the sourcing part. So this is 1, this is 2. Or if you're planning for make, or you're planning for deliver, or you're planning for return. The step that we're covering here is we want to analyze the material requirement planning for the production. We find that this is a P. This is a P. Level 1 is P. Within the P, it's a planning for the production. So it's a planning for the make, the production. So this is P3. So this will be called P3. So in some companies, they call it production control. In other companies, they call it the supply chain planning. In the SCOR model, we call it one name, P3. It means we're planning for the make process. Now, if we have a look at the level 3, this plan make is divided into steps here. And instead of having different steps for different companies, we have standard steps here. So when I say P3.1, it means it's planning for making, and this is step 1 in the steps for the planning for making. So basically, for today, we covered the introduction to SCOR. We identified what will you expect, or what to expect when you deal with the SCOR, what processes are covered by the SCOR. And in the next time, inshallah, I'll be revising all of this again, and we will go into the details, how to use it, how to find it, how to conclude some conclusion about, or recommendation about the company. Thank you for listening, and see you inshallah next week.